Scooby-Doo wasn't just a cartoon, it was a cultural earthquake. When it first aired in 1969, it blended comedy, mystery, and a lovable talking dog into television magic. But what happens when studios chase a formula without truly understanding it? Tonight, we dig into 20 forgotten, desperate, and sometimes laughable cartoons that tried to copy Scooby-Doo and failed spectacularly. The Funky Phantom, 1971. When Hanna-Barbera struck gold with Scooby-Doo, rival studios scrambled to create their own mystery-solving teens. Enter the Funky Phantom, a bizarre blend of Revolutionary War ghost and meddling kids. The premise? A group of teenagers stumbles upon the spirit of Jonathan Wellington Mudsey Muddlemore, a bumbling colonial ghost who, get this, sounds exactly like Snagglepuss. While Scooby's humor came from charm, the Funky Phantom relied on tired jokes and a paper-thin concept. Critics and fans noted it felt more like a poor imitation than an original idea. Even its mascot-like ghost companion was seen as a hollow stand-in for Scooby himself. Behind the scenes, the production was rushed. Hanna-Barbera, pressured by networks hungry for the next Scooby-Doo, recycled character designs and voices from other shows. Kids quickly spotted the similarities, and by 1972, the Funky Phantom was already fading from memory. In the end, it proved one thing: you can't summon lightning in a bottle just by swapping a dog for a ghost. Clue Club, 1976. CBS wasn't about to let Hanna-Barbera have all the glory. Clue Club featured 4 teenagers solving mysteries with the help of their dogs, Woofer and Whimper. Sound familiar? That's because it was a near photocopy of Scooby-Doo, down to the gang's van and episodic masked villain structure. What made Clue Club worse was its lack of originality. Scooby thrived on humor, while Clue Club leaned heavily into dialogue-heavy detective work, leaving kids bored. Its canine companions, meant to provide comic relief, only came across as irritating imitators. The series lasted barely a season before being shuffled into CBS's Saturday morning rerun lineup, where it was quickly forgotten. Even Hanna-Barbera insiders later admitted it was an uninspired attempt to cash in. Ironically, the biggest mystery surrounding Clue Club is how anyone thought it could compete with Scooby at all. Goober and the Ghost Chasers, 1973. Imagine Scooby-Doo, but instead of one charmingly cowardly dog, you get a clumsy bloodhound named Goober who can turn invisible when scared. Sounds intriguing? Sadly, the execution was a disaster. Goober and the Ghost Chasers was infamous for its lazy writing. Each episode followed an almost identical formula. Goober would panic, disappear, and reappear just in time for the kids to unmask another not-so-scary villain. Critics called it Scooby-Doo with the volume turned down. Adding insult to injury, the show awkwardly forced in celebrity cameos from bubblegum, pop bands like the Partridge Family. Rather than drawing viewers, it felt like a desperate gimmick. Ratings tanked, and after just one season, Goober disappeared, this time for good. In the end, Goober proved that invisibility doesn't hide bad storytelling. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids, 1973. With a name borrowed from one of cinema's grittiest westerns, you'd think this cartoon would offer something bold. Instead, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids gave audiences yet another recycled Scooby-Doo formula, only this time with a teen rock band doubling as amateur detectives. The idea was supposed to ride the coattails of the Archies and Scooby's success. But the execution was shallow. The mysteries were weak, the humor fell flat, and the band's songs were uninspired filler. Even its dog mascot, Elvis, felt like a hollow Scooby knockoff. Behind the curtain, Hanna-Barbera was under pressure from ABC to churn out more Saturday morning content. The result was an overproduced but soulless show that couldn't find an audience. It was canceled after 13 episodes. Like its namesake film, This show rode into the sunset, but without leaving any legacy behind. Speed Buggy, 1973. On paper, Speed Buggy looked like a clever twist on the Scooby-Doo formula. Instead of a dog, the gang's sidekick was a talking dune buggy named Speedy. Voiced with sputtering sounds and goofy enthusiasm, Speed Buggy was designed to charm kids and sell toys. The premise had promise, a trio of teens traveling from race to race while solving mysteries along the way. But beneath the quirky idea lay a blatant attempt to replicate Scooby's success. The three teens mirrored Fred, Daphne, and Velma almost exactly, while Speed Buggy stood in for Scooby himself. Critics pointed out the repetitive storylines and thinly written villains. Each week, the mysteries unfolded with little suspense, leaving viewers more annoyed than amused. While Scooby's humor felt spontaneous, Speed Buggy's catchphrases and antics seemed forced. Though it ran for a year and enjoyed brief rerun life, it never found lasting cultural impact. Its failure proved that swapping a Great Dane for a talking car wasn't enough to recapture Scooby's magic. Jabberjaw, 1976. What if Scooby-Doo were a shark? That was the thinking behind Jabberjaw, a Hanna-Barbera creation set in a futuristic undersea world. The show followed a rock band, complete with meddling teens, solving mysteries while accompanied by their giant air-breathing shark who sounded suspiciously like Curly from the Three Stooges. Despite the novelty, Jabberjaw couldn't escape its derivative roots. Each episode played like a beat-for-beat imitation of Scooby-Doo, only with watery settings and recycled jokes. Jabberjaw's slapstick antics were designed for laughs, but audiences quickly saw through the gimmick. The futuristic setting was colorful, yet it lacked originality. The mysteries were predictable, and the humor wore thin after a few episodes. Kids enjoyed the shark's silliness, but older viewers found the show shallow and unimaginative. Canceled after just 16 episodes, Jabberjaw became another reminder that the Scooby formula couldn't be copied with mere cosmetic changes. Even under the sea, originality still mattered. Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, 1977. By the late 70s, Hanna-Barbera had perfected its Scooby clone assembly line. Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels was their boldest attempt yet, combining mystery-solving teens with a prehistoric superhero frozen in ice. Voiced by Mel Blanc, Captain Caveman shouted his name with gusto, but that was the show's only real spark. The Teen Angels filled familiar roles: leader, brainy girl, and stylish companion, direct stand-ins for Scooby's gang. The mysteries were formulaic, villains unmemorable, and the caveman's slapstick antics wore thin quickly. Audiences tuned in initially, but ratings slipped as kids recognized the recycled format. Behind the scenes, the show was rushed to capitalize on the superhero craze of the late 70s. Instead of blending genres seamlessly, it mashed them awkwardly. The result was a half-hearted mystery show with little lasting charm. While Caveman later appeared in crossovers, his original series stood as another failed attempt to reinvent Scooby-Doo's success. Devlin, 1974. Trying to ride the coattails of Evel Knievel's Daredevil fame, Hanna-Barbera launched Devlin. The show followed motorcycle stuntman Ernie Devlin and his siblings as they toured the country, performing stunts and solving light mysteries. Unlike Scooby, it leaned into realism. There were no ghosts, no dogs, and little comedy. Unfortunately, kids weren't interested in grounded, serious stories. The show lacked Scooby-Doo's whimsy and humor, replacing it with moral lessons and family drama. Viewers expecting excitement found slow pacing and repetitive plots. Ratings plummeted, and the show was canceled after just 16 episodes. Though well-intentioned, Devlin proved that stripping away Scooby's charm left behind a hollow shell. Without humor or memorable characters, it faded into obscurity. Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space, 1972. After Josie and the Pussycats found modest success as a music mystery blend, Hanna-Barbera made a bizarre decision: send the band into outer space. The result, Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space, was an odd attempt to combine Scooby-Doo's teen sleuth format with Star Trek's interstellar adventures. At first glance, the idea seemed innovative: a traveling rock band lost in space, solving mysteries and encountering aliens, could have given Saturday mornings a unique flavor. But in execution, it fell flat. The show simply recycled Scooby's formula with cosmic backdrops, mysterious villains, disguises, and unmaskings, without adding genuine suspense or creativity. Behind the scenes, executives were desperate to keep the Josie franchise alive, hoping to capitalize on both Scooby's popularity and America's growing obsession with space exploration. Instead, kids found the outer space setting confusing and less relatable than Scooby's haunted mansions or carnival grounds. The show lasted only a single season before being shelved, remembered mainly as one of Hanna-Barbera's strangest pivots. It demonstrated the dangers of overextending a formula without truly reinventing it. The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan, 1972. Borrowing both from Scooby-Doo and pop culture stereotypes, The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan followed Detective Charlie Chan and his 12 children, who solved mysteries alongside their talking dog, Choo Choo. On paper, it looked like a diverse, family-friendly spin on the Scooby Gang. In reality, it became one of Hanna-Barbera's most awkward failures. The show's biggest flaw was its bloated cast. With so many characters, no one had room to develop. Viewers couldn't connect with the kids, and the show leaned heavily on generic mysteries and formulaic jokes. Even the dog, Choo Choo, was a Scooby imitation with little personality of his own. Controversy also plagued the series. Critics called out its reliance on Asian stereotypes, and Charlie Chan's voice, performed by Key Luke, was criticized for being reduced to catchphrases and exaggerated quirks. Kids tuned out, parents objected, and the show was quietly canceled after one season. While well-intentioned in concept, the Chan Clan ended up being another failed attempt to repackage Scooby-Doo's magic, leaving behind little more than cultural missteps and forgettable plots. Rickety Rocket, 1979. By the late 70s, the Scooby formula was growing stale, yet Hanna-Barbera refused to let it go. Rickety Rocket attempted to modernize the concept by introducing a group of futuristic teens and their robotic spaceship, Rickety, who helped them solve cosmic crimes. The gimmick? Rickety was cobbled together from spare parts, constantly falling apart while delivering comic one-liners. But rather than endearing, the shtick quickly became annoying. Unlike Scooby, who was charming in his cowardice, Rickety felt forced, a clunky robot sidekick with no warmth. The mysteries were weak, relying more on slapstick and futuristic gadgets than actual suspense. Critics dismissed it as Scooby-Doo in space, but broken, and kids agreed. The show was paired with Plastic Man cartoons, but never gained traction. Behind the scenes, Hanna-Barbera was under pressure to diversify characters, leading to a team of African-American teen detectives, a progressive move for the time. Unfortunately, the execution undermined its potential by wrapping it in tired formulas. Rickety Rocket proved that progressiveness alone couldn't save a show built on recycled ideas. Its legacy is one of good intentions buried beneath bad storytelling. Fangface, 1978. Rub off on Scooby's formula too closely, and you get Fangface, a blatant clone produced by Ruby Spears. The setup was Scooby in reverse, a gang of teens with a werewolf sidekick named Sherman Fangface Fangsworth, who transformed into a wolf whenever he saw the moon, or even a picture of one. The humor relied almost entirely on Fangface's bumbling transformations. But unlike Scooby's charming cowardice, Fangface was more of a nuisance, constantly ruining plans and creating chaos that had to be cleaned up by the rest of the gang. Viewers quickly realized the character lacked depth, and his antics wore thin fast. Critics dismissed it as unimaginative, and Scooby fans saw it for what it was, an imitation without heart. Despite this, the show lasted 2 short seasons, mostly because networks were hungry for anything resembling Scooby's success. Behind the curtain, Ruby Spears was composed of ex-Hanna-Barbera talent, making the imitation sting even more. Instead of offering innovation, they recycled old tricks. Though Fangface has a cult following today, it stands as another example of how Scooby's magic couldn't simply be bottled and sold again under a different name. The Buford Files, 1979. The Buford Files tried to capture Scooby-Doo's essence, but ended up as another pale imitation. Produced by Hanna-Barbera, it followed Buford, a sleepy, droopy-looking bloodhound with a nose for solving crimes. Alongside a pair of Southern teens, Buford stumbled his way through mysteries in the rural backwoods. At first glance, the setup had potential. The Southern setting was different from the haunted houses and amusement parks Scooby usually explored. But the stories were shallow, predictable, and repetitive. Buford was meant to be funny. He snored loudly, scratched fleas, and dozed through half the action. But audiences found him more sluggish than lovable. Critics pointed out that Buford lacked the heart and personality of Scooby. While Scooby bumbled with charm, Buford just seemed lazy. Even kids tuned out, unimpressed with the paper-thin plots. The show aired as part of Buford and the Galloping Ghost, but was quickly forgotten when ratings fell flat. Behind the scenes, animators were recycling designs and gags from other Hanna-Barbera projects, giving Buford a cut-and-paste feel. It never got a chance to stand out. Today, it survives only as a footnote, a reminder that even the most loyal bloodhound couldn't sniff out the magic Scooby had perfected. The New Shmoo, 1979. One of Hanna-Barbera's strangest experiments was The New Shmoo. Based on Al Capp's comic strip character, Shmoo was a friendly white blob who could shapeshift. Hoping to ride Scooby-Doo's wave, the studio inserted him into a mystery-solving teen format. In theory, Shmoo's shape-shifting powers could have brought creativity and fun to the mysteries. But in practice, the show felt like Scooby-Doo with a gooey twist. The teen characters were carbon copies of Fred, Daphne, and Velma, and the EY mysteries played out in predictable villain-in-disguise patterns. Kids liked Shmoo's silly antics for a time, but critics dismissed the show as derivative and strange. Shmoo wasn't funny enough to stand on his own, nor engaging enough to carry the team dynamic. He was simply Scooby in slime form, and audiences could tell. Behind the scenes, Hanna-Barbera executives hoped Shmoo would become a merchandising hit like Scooby. Instead, sales were weak, and the show vanished after 1 season. Today, The New Shmoo is remembered less as an innovation and more as proof that even a shape-shifting blob couldn't replicate the magic of a talking Great Dane. Inch High, Private Eye, 1973. Hanna-Barbera took Scooby-Doo's mystery formula and shrank it, literally. Inch High, Private Eye featured a bumbling detective who stood only 1 inch tall, assisted by his niece, her friend, and their dog, Braveheart. Together they solved mysteries with comedic hijinks. The concept had novelty, but the execution was clumsy. Inch High's size was supposed to be a running gag, yet most episodes barely used it creatively. Instead, the show leaned heavily on slapstick humor and recycled mystery plots straight out of Scooby-Doo. Critics noted that the characters were forgettable, and Inch High himself was more irritating than endearing. Braveheart the dog added little, serving as yet another Scooby substitute without any real charm. Ratings were poor, and the show was canceled after just 13 episodes. Behind the scenes, the show suffered from rushed writing and low budgets, which showed in the stiff animation and recycled gags. What could have been an imaginative twist turned into another case of lazy cloning. Inch High, Private Eye stands today as one of the most blatant reminders that copying Scooby wasn't enough. You needed heart, humor, and originality. Mysteries of the Super Friends, 1980. As superheroes dominated comics, Hanna-Barbera attempted to fuse the Scooby-Doo formula with the Justice League. The result, Mysteries of the Super Friends, was less heroic than it sounds. Instead of epic battles, episodes often followed simplified mystery plots, with heroes acting more like Scooby's gang than legendary icons. The show paired Batman, Superman, and other heroes with overly formulaic storylines, masked villains, goofy traps, and predictable reveals. Kids who tuned in expecting thrilling action felt cheated. The heroes weren't fighting cosmic threats. They were unmasking crooks in ways that felt suspiciously like Scooby-Doo reruns. Behind the scenes, Hanna-Barbera leaned on this formula because it was cheap, easy, and familiar. But superheroes stripped of their power and reduced to Scooby clones left audiences frustrated. Ratings faltered, and while the Super Friends brand endured, this iteration quietly disappeared. Looking back, Mysteries of the Super Friends proved that even superheroes couldn't save a show weighed down by recycled Scooby storytelling. Dynomutt, Dog Wonder, 1976. On the surface, Dynomutt, Dog Wonder seemed like Scooby-Doo's mechanical cousin. Voiced by Frank Welker, Dynomutt was a robotic dog with extendable limbs and gadgets, partnered with Blue Falcon, a superhero modeled after Batman. Together, they solved crimes and foiled villains in a style that blended superhero parody with slapstick comedy. Despite its originality and concept, the execution fell into the same pitfalls as Scooby clones. Dynomutt's bumbling antics often overshadowed any mystery solving. Viewers expected clever gadgetry, but got endless malfunction gags instead. The dynamic between Blue Falcon and Dynomutt also felt lopsided. Blue Falcon was straight-laced, while Dynomutt's incompetence constantly derailed the story. Critics at the time noted that children tuned in for action but were left with silliness. The mysteries were shallow, villains weak, and the humor one-note. Though it lasted 2 seasons, Dynomutt never captured the enduring appeal of Scooby and his gang. Behind the scenes, Hanna-Barbera hoped the show would ride the superhero wave of the mid-'70s. Instead, it became another case study in how rehashing Scooby's sidekick formula without the right balance of charm and story simply didn't work. Jabberjaw, 1976, revisited. Though already mentioned in Hanna-Barbera's lineup, Jabberjaw deserves a higher spot because of how boldly it leaned into Scooby-Doo imitation. A 15-foot talking shark playing drums in a teen rock band sounds wacky enough to be memorable. But its resemblance to Scooby was too on the nose, cowardly, bumbling, funny voice, and a knack for accidentally solving mysteries. The undersea setting gave it novelty, but the stories were virtually identical to Scooby's haunted house plots. Villains wore disguises, the gang investigated, and Jabberjaw panicked, repeated weekly. The shark's shtick, speaking in Curly Howard's voice from the Three Stooges, felt like a gimmick stretched too thin. Kids laughed at first, but the humor wore off quickly. Despite Hanna-Barbera's heavy marketing push, the show ended after 16 episodes. Jabberjaw's legacy today is mostly nostalgic. He pops up in cameos and parody references. Yet his short-lived run remains a reminder that swapping Scooby's breed for another animal didn't guarantee lasting magic. The Harlem Globetrotters, 1970-71. The Harlem Globetrotters were basketball superstars, so when Hanna-Barbera got the rights to animate them, it seemed like a slam dunk. Instead, what emerged was essentially Scooby-Doo with basketball uniforms. The team traveled in a bus, encountered mysteries, and unmasked villains, just like Mystery Inc. The problem? The show cared more about gimmicks than storytelling. Each episode mixed basketball antics with Scooby-style mysteries, but neither element landed well. The Globetrotters' animated personalities were one-dimensional, and the mysteries predictable. Behind the scenes, Hanna-Barbera banked on the team's real-life fame to carry the show. But translating sports charisma into cartoon mystery-solving didn't work. Kids wanted to see thrilling games, not watered-down detective work. Ratings fell, and while the Globetrotters remained icons, their cartoon was quickly benched. Ironically, the Globetrotters later appeared in Scooby-Doo crossovers, where they worked better as guest stars than as Scooby substitutes. The Partridge Family 2200 AD, 1974. At the top of our list is The Partridge Family 2200 AD, one of Hanna-Barbera's strangest experiments. Taking the live-action Partridge Family sitcom and pushing it into the year 2200, the show tried to merge teen band adventures with Scooby-Doo-style mysteries. The futuristic setting, flying cars, robots, space travel, was supposed to make it fresh. Instead, it only highlighted how derivative the show was. The characters were thin copies of the Scooby Gang archetypes, and the mysteries followed the same villain-in-a-mask structure. Even the family's pet dog was given Scooby-like antics to appeal to fans. Behind the scenes, ABC desperately wanted to compete with the Jetsons' revival and Scooby's success, but the mashup confused audiences. Ratings crashed, and the show was canceled after just one season. Today, The Partridge Family 2200 AD is remembered not for its creativity, but for its awkwardness. It represents the height of Scooby-Doo cloning gone wrong, proving once and for all that Scooby's magic couldn't be manufactured on an assembly line. From ghosts to sharks, from talking cars to futuristic rock bands, every studio wanted Scooby's lightning in a bottle. Yet each imitation proved one thing: charm can't be cloned. Scooby-Doo endures because he was more than a formula. He was heart. Which of these failures do you remember?